Well, hello, folks. Thank you for joining us for today's BU Alumni Career Webinar, Boosting Time Management and Productivity in the Modern Age of Work. My name is Jeff Murphy. I'm a member of the Alumni Career Engagement Team from the BU Alumni Association. Delighted to have you all here today. Today's webinar is offered to our 385,000 alumni around the globe, and of course, all of our current students. And we appreciate everybody tuning in, some of you from some places that are very far away from BU's campuses. Throughout your career, BU is committed to helping you define and achieve your professional goals, and we aim to do this by providing all of you with access to a series of valuable programs, tools, and communities. In addition to this webinar series that you've joined us for, one of our most exciting resources is a free online community called BU Connects. If you haven't already signed up, I hope you'll take just a couple minutes after this presentation is over to set up your free profile at buconnects.com. We have over 30,000 BU alumni and students who are already on the platform. It is the very best place to build your professional network with other terriers. You can join regional and special interest groups. And of course, you can also become a mentor, find a mentor, or hopefully do both. Before I introduce today's speaker, just a couple housekeeping notes from me. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni and Friends website, which you can find at bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is also very eager to answer any questions that you have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A function. Again, hover over your screen, find your Zoom toolbar, just click on Q&A. You can go ahead and type your question in whenever it comes to you, and we're going to make sure to save time at the end to answer as many questions as we can. I'll also keep an eye on the chat, so if you're already more familiar with that, please feel free to use the chat to ask questions as well. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day, BU Graduate School of Arts and Sciences alum Stefan Kalt. After completing his graduate studies in philosophy at Boston University, Dr. Kalt taught humanities and social sciences at BU's Great Books core curriculum for several years, facilitating in-depth discussion about central texts in the Western and Eastern philosophical traditions. He later trained at the Center for Executive Coaching. You can learn more about Dr. Kalt on his website at highereducationconsulting.com. And I know, Stefan, at the end, you're going to share ways that people can find out even more about you and the work that you do. I do want to, before you kick it off, I do want to mention, we decided yesterday to make a slight edit to the title of today's session. We were calling it self-management, but we decided that it was actually more appropriate to say time management. Do you want to comment on that briefly before we move on?
Sure, sure. There are elements of self-management in this presentation, but I kick it off with time management, which is a kind of self-management. I want to be a bit more specific, so I thought that would be a better
Great.
way to kind of clue you into it.
Well, thanks again for being back to speak to the BU community, and the floor is all yours.
Great. Thanks, Jeff, for the introduction, for facilitating this, and thanks for everybody here for showing up for this webinar. I want to say a few things before I begin discussing the contents of this proper, but it's going to be divided into two parts, time and task management two, and then some productivity hacks. So tips for time and task management, productivity hacks. Um, First, what I'm not going to be talking about, just to be kind of clear the rubble from the road, I'm not going to be discussing project management related to work specifically, nor how to manage teams or groups of people. It's really about how to, in some cases, manage yourself and trying to be as efficient as effective in whatever your role might be at work. Would also like to add something else. Won't be talking about um, how you select goals and projects for work, although I'll be talking about projects to some extent, mainly tasks with projects too. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm just going to assume that you have goals and projects that you're interested in pursuing. Um, how to select or think up or dream up creative projects is a topic that's really very entire in and of itself. It could probably be the subject of a separate presentation. Okay, so without more ado, I'd like to get into this. The main, the sort of the the main piece, the main centerpiece of this presentation is going to be to-do lists. Okay, and the first part of this specifically. And what I do is I sketch a system, kind of a management system centered on a regular habit. And I'm following someone named David Allen, who wrote a book called Getting Things Done. He calls it the daily review. I tweak it a little bit, but it's in the spirit of what he offers there. Okay. As a general comment, many things that I say today you will have heard of. Some things will be less familiar to you. You might not have heard them configured in the way that I put them here. Also, my proposals are suggestions. I want to make that clear, to be adopted or ignored as you see fit. Okay. I've never seen a single system that works for everybody. And I think you should always feel free to kind of take what you like and leave what doesn't resonate with you or what doesn't seem useful to you. And I've seen sometimes opposite practices and approaches can work for different people. And I think that's perfectly all right. It's natural. We all have different capacities and preferences. So please understand that's the spirit in which I discuss some of this material today. All right. The daily review, what is it? It's basically scanning and creation of lists containing projects, as you can see, tasks, and information that you've captured. Okay? And this is a regular practice, which I call an anchoring habit. And why is that? Because it basically structures and gives direction to the entire workday. Okay, and I'll be talking about this in terms of also a weekly review and a few other things. But this is kind of the nucleus of it. Okay. I'd like to ask before I get on with this. This is a polling question that I talked about with just how many of you use to-do lists? So not to do it, but to-do lists.
Stefan, I can see that people are seeing this and answers are coming in fast and furious. Thank you, everybody.
Right.
So I actually gave it three separate answers, Stefan. I don't know if you can see that, but either you
Yes,
always are using to-do lists. Sometimes, like me, I'm actually more of a sometimes I have a to-do list person, or never. You probably can't see the answers coming in. Stefan, do you have a projection on how this is going to come out? Do you think most people
I
are
can't see anything right here,
right?
but
No,
my
that's the
sense,
idea.
aha,
Well, how do you
right.
think people are going to answer on this? When you talk about this, are more people
Yeah,
making lists, or are people not really taking advantage of that?
it's sometimes. I think some people they just kind of, fly and shoot at the seat of their pants, and there are people who are real like list mavens, and they love that. I don't
Sure.
know if everybody uses them religiously. Oh, we've got always. Oh, all right.
68% of our
That's
guests are
great. I guess we've
always
got,
making
yeah, we
to-do
have
lists,
we
which is
have people who
fantastic.
are really into this.
And not a single person who
Okay,
said that they never used that as a strategy.
terrific.
So pretty interesting.
All right. Good to hear it. Okay. So this may be of interest to a lot of folks. All right, you probably all have some kind of approach. And like I said, this is a suggestion for you to consider in the context of the practices that you currently have. Okay. Now, how many do you need? I don't think there's a magic number, but I think four is probably a place to start. Okay. And a couple of these you're already using, perhaps two to three even. Okay. So your daily to do would be one, a weekly plus to do. What is that? Okay. It's kind of a master list containing some of the weeks and beyond to do items. Think of it as sort of a holding tank for tasks you want to do, may contain projects. Um, in the future, you might select from those to populate a daily to-do list. It's just a way of capturing those possibilities and in certain cases, things that you're required to do. The calendar is a list, okay, of appointments, sometimes reminders to self, etc. And then what I call a daily capture list. And what is that? It's information that you need to write down or be filed or stored away later. And what I assume here is you have files, places to put things, and if you don't, you would want to create them or are in the process of creating them. But this is kind of like a sorting mechanism. It's like an inbox. Think of it that way. And then the question later is, well, where do I put stuff? That's fine. I'll be discussing that. These are your basic lists. Okay. Um, when should you conduct this daily review. So as I say, the daily review is this nucleus. I suggested 4 lists and when. Well, my short answer is whatever time works for you. The main thing is to stick to it, make it a regular practice. It sounds like a lot of you are, if you're not doing this, you're on the cusp of doing it. Lists are central to how you manage yourself. Okay. If you're not sure what time that is, I would experiment doing it in the evening. Okay, which might seem a little nuts, but there are some reasons for this. As you can see, if you do it in the morning, it can be kind of a rush. Okay, and you might not get to everything. Also, if you do it at night, ideas will pop into your head. You'll have time to think about those in the meantime. And our brain is often at work at night. And while we're asleep, subconsciously or unconsciously, what have you, sometimes things will pop up. Some folks have said to me, wait a minute, if I do in the evening, I'll be just anxious about what I need to do the next day. Isn't this going to kind of rile me up? I found it to be the opposite. Kind of do like you just get it all out of your head. And now you can go to sleep knowing that a good bit of what you want to do has been settled. Maybe not forever, but at least for the time being. Okay. And here's what really comes down to is it reduces stress in the morning. You already have a game plan. Okay. It's not one that's going to be set in stone, and any good system is flexible. At least you have some goalposts, something in place. Where should you write this? Different ways to do it. I would definitely say not on loose leaf paper, micro pads, and stickies, which some folks do, and sometimes you got to do that, sort of on the fly. But they're so easy to lose track of. Just a notebook. Keep it open and within easy reach. Sometimes when I work with folks, they have a notebook, but it's nowhere within reach. So make sure it's accessible to you, okay, within easy reach. You can also use task managers or note-taking apps. These are very popular. Todoist, OneNote, AnyDo, Evernote. These are some popular alternatives. I use Todoist. I've tried AnyDo. I actually use OneNote as well for different things, and I'll talk a little bit about how I do it. It may not be how you do it, and that's fine. But if you hear me say something about why I use a particular solution, maybe that'll resonate with you. Sometimes, like as you can see, people migrate between different solutions, different approaches. Use MS Words as well. I just want to talk a little bit about the pros of using a notebook. Incidentally, some of what I say may seem very general. I make some general statements, and often I get into what could seem like the micro mechanics of this. What I have noticed is that sometimes it's a small point in a system for someone that's not working that causes them to abandon the system. And because they've made a choice, it doesn't really work. So sometimes I'll kind of drill down and look at the details. So I want to talk a little bit about where you write these lists. Okay, pros of a notebook, consolidates, prevents stuff from getting scattered. Okay, you've got a record, you have like a little diary, especially if it's a spiral of what you've done on previous days, you can go back. Even if you've crossed stuff off, there's a record. And it's easy to use on the fly. You just, there it is, write stuff down. Some of the cons, why might you consider shifting away? Well, modifying can get a little messy, okay, especially for time blocking, which I'll talk about in a moment. Could use an erasable pen, which is what I've done, okay. Not as portable as a smartphone that has a task manager app on it. And one workaround, however, is to take a pic of your to-do on your notebook. To take a pic and you can carry that around with you. It's a temporary workaround because you'll want to make adjustments. You can't do that to the pic usually, but it can be useful if you're needing to go somewhere you can't take your notebook. What about an app? What are the pros of these? Synergizes with other apps. That can be pretty exciting for some. Their app can talk to their calendar, which can talk to other things, and that creates a bit of a productivity multiplier for them. And you can modify your list without creating this mess. Okay, without something I've seen someone show me their to-do list and it's got stuff written, stuff crossed out, smudges and all this. The app's pretty clean. Unlimited tasks. Okay, easy to move items between lists, and it's very portable. So on. Are there any cons? Yes. Some of you might be using a desktop in addition. There have been some of these syncing delays, snafus, etc. It may not be as immediately accessible as a notebook lying in front of you. So I'm not making a case. You got to shift. I'm not like some crazy pro technology person. I have a hybrid system myself, and that might be best for you. And if some of you are like really old fashioned, you got the calendar, that's paper to in front of you, and it's working, then stick with it. But if you've been wondering, maybe I should should move. These are some reasons to consider. Okay. But nevertheless, smartphone apps can also be a little bit time consuming to interface with when it's on your cell phone, because there you are doing all this stuff. That can be a bit of an obstacle. Also, there's a learning curve. It's software. And then people think this is fantastic, and then they got to learn it, and they feel a bit discouraged, and the app kind of goes by. Okay. Probably a little pointer here. If you do use your notebook, here's what I suggest. Okay. Capture list either on the back of your daily to-do list or facing it. Okay. Because it keeps them together. So it kind of looks like this. Uh, Try to consolidate those lists. You've got to do, but you're kind of writing stuff all over the place. If you have them together, then there's a synergy there. Okay, and I've noticed personally and share with others, have shared with me that this is one way to do it. Think about it if it works for you. One nice thing with the daily capture, if it's on the back, is that if you're gathering information or tasks that you're going to do in the future, you don't have them staring at you, distracting you. You're really focused on what you're doing today. A little downside there can be sometimes that the things that you want to do today you can't see. Some folks just split their to-do list. Maybe you're doing this between what they're going to be doing and information that they need for the day. Do it your way. These are options that you can consider. By the way, I think an electronic solution is probably better for that bigger master list. And the reason, so since you're not referring to it all the time, you don't need it as immediately accessible. You kind of check in, okay, a bit more episodically. All right. And it doesn't have to function as a record of past stuff. Uh, and it is for that reason can be revised in a different way. And I think it's easily done electronically. And lastly, if you're constantly recreating pairs of, say, daily to-do lists and capture lists, kind of eats up the real estate of your notebook. So consider that. Okay, you've got your notebook, let's say, but you might be using your task list, in which case everything's all there. And this is not going to be a problem that you're going to face. What's the procedure? Well, there's a big debate about this. I have a suggestion here, and you'll find other suggestions elsewhere. But here's what it looks like. Folks, take out a blank sheet and do what I call a brain dump. Okay. When you perform, this is during your daily review. What is that? In a special order, just list stuff that you're going to do the next day. Okay, whatever it is, whatever it is that you think you may do, and don't be concerned about filtering priority. Okay, that can cause some stress. Excuse me, it can cause some stress and a little bit of anxiety and slows the process down. The main thing is just to get stuff out there. Okay, what do you think you're going to do for the upcoming day? Where do you get these ideas? Where do your tasks come from? Well, check your weekly. Okay, check that larger list and migrate any tasks you think you're going to do. You're probably already looking at your daily to-do list and migrate incompletes that you still want to perform. Okay, and then you'll check off, scratch out stuff you don't. And here's the thing, put what you still want to do, but maybe not today, we're not sure quite when, put it back on your weekly for future consultation. That way you haven't lost it, but it's also not distracting you on a to-do list, sort of off to the side. There's a couple more steps and we're done with this. Check your daily capture list. You've probably been writing down some tasks there too. Okay, they may not be things you're going to do today, but in the future, that's information. So it goes on the daily capture. Migrate those tasks to the do list and or your weekly. Okay, you're going to obviously calendarize appointments. You probably do that during the day, but if you haven't done it because you put some on your daily capture list, do it then and then file info. Okay, and the idea is to kind of evacuate your daily capture list so it's a fresh list for the next day. It's the main thing here. You already do this, checking your calendar for appointments, deadlines. I just mentioned it in passing. Okay. And lastly, it's when you just sit back and think of anything else you want to do. So here you've kind of gone to some various troughs for things that you kind of have a sense that you're going to do. There's already evidence of this. And now you can sort of lie back and say, what else do I want to do? Do I need to do? I'm going to add something here. You might check some of your projects if you've got for next steps. Okay. I don't believe you should be looking at them in a super detailed way now. And I'll say why in a minute, but to quickly scan those, perfectly appropriate here, and then populate your list. All right. And now it's time to do your daily to-do list itself. I would say start with a fresh sheet. You can, if you want to keep what you've got, because there's not a whole lot on it, that's fine. But the main thing is to start with a fresh sheet every day, rather than having a garland of tasks that you've kind of done. Scratch them off in a messy sheet that can be confusing and difficult to discriminate uh, tasks that you want to perform that day. Okay. And I suggest using time blocks. I didn't ask how many people do this. I do wonder how many do it and how many don't. It can be a little intimidating. Some people say, this is like a straitjacket. It's like putting me in some kind of a prison for the day, choosing start and end times for tasks. If you feel super allergic to this, just close your ears. You don't have to do it. Okay. But if you're thinking, maybe this is something worth trying, give it a go. And many of you are doing it probably. Okay. Like I say, if you can't, at least try to put your list roughly in the order that you think you're going to do it. That may change, but it kind of gives you a sense of your game plan. And here's just a simplified list, what this would look like. Not everything has to be time blocked, but maybe certain important things will be. Okay. The more you practice it, the better you get. The more you practice it, the better you get. You get better at time estimation. That's, I think, one of the key wins from this. All right. Why time block? Just want to say a few things. Some people's jobs, you just can't do it, especially a job that has constant interruptions. It might render time blocking, if not useless, just very difficult. And I respect that. Okay. But it does ensure coordination of your tasks, prioritization, because now you actually have to sit down and decide what it is you can and can't do, rather than remaining kind of abstract and up in the air. Just a mere list is like a blob. Some of it's attractive, some of it's possible, some of it's impossible, perhaps on second thought. Here you actually have to decide, what can I plug in? Like putting your foot into a shoe. Does it fit? And you're going to probably find that, okay, now that this is an important moment, make a decision, I can't do that. At least not now. You can go on your weekly plus list, for example, or you might scratch it off and say, it's not realistic. I don't want to pursue that anymore. Right. Help prevent task creep, okay, because you've got starts and finish times. And also, that can reduce procrastination. Why is that? You've made a little contract with yourself. It's tighter than just writing something on a list or doing nothing. But none of you are doing nothing. Okay, but it's like a little contract to complete what you've said you're going to do. This is what people have reported to me. I feel a little bit myself. Somehow there's more skin in the game. I feel like a bit of of an investment. Okay, guys, a couple of options. This is really options with a capital O. Sometimes including your calendar appointments on your daily to-do list can be good. Why? It helps you better assess the sequence of all your tasks, and it gives you just a total picture of the day. Some of you might think, okay, this is too much. I got my calendar. I don't need that advice. Don't take it. Okay. But if you think you could benefit from this, I say give it a shot. Also, if you don't have the energy to do both the brain dump and to make your two daily to-dos, split it up. They really involve, to some extent, different sort of facets of the mind, especially when you're sitting back and thinking of what you could do. That's expansive. And then when you're plugging things in, that's a bit more analytical. You don't have the data and you're trying to work with it. So split it up if it feels like your brain is moving in too many different directions at once. You could do one in the evening, for example, or one in the morning. But I'll let you think about that. I'm not going to dictate terms here, but giving yourself a little bit of a break between the two is one way to handle this if it feels a little bit overwhelming. The daily capture list. I haven't talked about this a little bit. I have talked about it a little bit. I want to say a little more. When you receive or recall information, put it down there. There's a great benefit to just writing stuff down, especially as you get older. Okay, I'm forgetting everything. I'm putting it on lists, but crucial stuff. Can I writing everything down? No, but important stuff, get it down. And now you've got one place to put it rather than something over here, something over there. It's on one list. Not everything you've written down is going to be there. You've got stuff in project files, of course. I'm not suggesting anything like that. It's often you know exactly where to put something. Okay, but if something either occurs to you or you receive information sort of incoming, this is where it can go. Okay, and when it's incoming tasks, though, you want to put it on your daily to-do list. You'll find a place that can involve some reorganization. But if it is an incoming task and you don't need to do it today, put it on daily capture and then look over it when you got it during your daily review. Okay? Like if during the day you can move things around your lists easily, you don't need the daily review, do it. I suggest the daily review as a way to ensure that it happens. That's the main reason. Okay, you have a kind of a scheduled time when you take stock. Okay. This is a question. Should you use your calendar or your daily to-do list? Well, there are some benefits to this. It tells you to time block, at least to some extent, and it can simplify your system by eliminating an extra list. After all, it combines your calendar and your daily to-dos now combined. That's good. Okay. And there's some other reasons too, good things about this, but I just mentioned this in passing. Synergizes with other apps. You can email yourself a to-do list and have it right there. This is a huge plus for some folks. There are some drawbacks. Sometimes it can take a little more time, as with any electronic system, to plug the stuff in. It's a minor inconvenience for some, but for others, it might be more major. Okay, occasionally it can be a little difficult to reorganize, making really quick changes, adding or removing tasks. Here's the main thing, though. So all this stuff explodes on you. You've got your appointments, now you've got all these tasks. You have this dense thicket of information. Sometimes color coding can deal with that a little bit, but people report to me, and my own experience has been that it's a little bit too much. But if you're doing it, you're working for you, and you're nodding at me, stick with it. Okay, it obviously works for you, and there are reasons to make that change. Anyway, as I say, this is for folks who might be considering it. Calendar as deadline reminder. Yes. Okay, if you have a deadline, it's an important one, especially put it there. And then what I suggest is on the day of the deadline, just moving it to your daily to-do list so you can see it there as well. And you don't have to coordinate or you might miss it. It's all here. I want to say something about projects. My view is when you finish your day's work on a project, then you should think of your next steps that you're going to perform and put those on your, say, your daily capture list. If you're going to be performing them, say the next day. What is the alternative? Well, there are actually many alternatives. But here's one that's frequent, is to milk it during the daily review. I think the trouble there is that it takes a long time to go through all your projects and milk them then. And that may require a good bit of refamiliarization. So it's kind of nice to have already looked at your projects, put the tasks on the capture list, day list, and then during your daily review, just transfer onto your next to-do list. But like I said earlier, you might go back and look at some of those just as a quick scan, as a kind of a jogger. So I'm not saying it's taboo, but I wouldn't make that your first round. Otherwise, you're really going to be digging into those projects again, potentially, and that's going to really slow you down in terms of getting your system off the ground. Okay. Lastly, is the weekly, what I call the weekly plus review. So at the minimum, you want to have some list that contains tasks, and in this particular case, projects, goals that transcend just the day, and that you can use to populate your daily list. Okay, and I say at least once a week, conduct this weekly plus review. So it's your daily review plus another step, update that list. Okay, I'm not suggesting for a minute that the weekly plus should contain everything you're going to do that week and beyond, but important things that you feel would deserve a place there. And things will occur to you, obviously, during the course of the day, and then during your daily review, you put them there, or you might put them in your capture list to then migrate to that weekly if you're not going to do it the next day. This can contain goals or projects, like I said, because your to-do list for the day shouldn't. That really should contain things you're going to do, tasks. A project, you could say, is a sequence of tasks that leads to some kind of a result. And when I think of a goal, it's like the purpose itself. Goals may imply projects if you're going to implement those goals, make them real, but they might just stay as abstract purposes. And when you have a project going, sequence of tasks that lead you uh, to complete the project. And the tasks are mainly what the daily to-do list is about. Look, if you're using titles for your projects in your daily to-do list and you're putting tasks underneath that, that can work. And I'm the last person to say don't do it. But what I found is that just listing the tasks typically is good enough. You want to indicate what project it concerns, you can do that parentheses. This way, you're really concerned with action. Okay, but the weekly is where you're going to be culling actions from, so it doesn't have to contain them, though it may contain many of them. Okay, like I said here. So you can also do this on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. But do you want to have all these lists? It's up to you. Okay, you might have a monthly and beyond, or a 6 monthly and beyond. Some of you probably do this, even beyond. I'm just looking at it kind of like a life support system. Okay, it's at least something beyond the day that you can get your tasks and projects and just various ideas from. And if you want to make it more sophisticated, then feel free to do that and give you a sense of what that would involve with the weekly. And you can just extend that to your other lists. Um, Optional, we're just about at the end of this part. Our two other lists, okay, take it or leave it. One is something I've kept on my to-do list. It's almost like calls, emails that I need to send or make. Okay, don't want to put them on the capture because a lot of other stuff on there, and I kind of want to have quick access to them. And I could put them on the to-do, but sometimes there's so many incoming that I just keep them on a separate list. You may not have that issue, put them on your to-do list or handle them as you see fit. Okay, but this is one possibility. And the second is what I call a waiting for list. I get this from Dave Allen in his book, Getting Things Done. It's calls that are waiting replies, okay, and delegated projects or tasks, something like this. And here I often indicate the date that I've handed something off so that I know when to wait for it. Okay, that's like icing on the cake. Okay, if you want to add this to your suite of lists, I think the main thing, though, like I said at the outset, is to have a number of lists that is manageable, that is reduced to a manageable minimum, rather than an explosion of lists. And it may seem to you like, wait a minute, you've given me an explosion of lists. That's like 4 or 5 lists already. I've got one. What I've seen is that the more that's incorporated into a system, the more you move seamlessly between your lists and don't even notice it. I wouldn't say it feels like one list, but they interconnect in a pretty effective way. So don't feel intimidated, is what I'm saying. Start off with two, for example. Okay, let's start off with two. Add another one if you find that, gee, I could probably outboard this a bit more and go from there. And if some of you feel like it's time to prune, then, do that. It may be the time to let go of some of these lists. Some folks have like 6 month, 1 year, they never look at those lists. So I say drop it. Just keep it simple. Okay. So looking back, folks, what have we talked about? Brain dump, daily to-do list, basic lists, okay? And that include the basic list, the daily capture list. I even call the calendar a list. That's what it is. And then the weekly plus. Time blocking, use of the calendar itself, the daily capture list, more specifics, projects, how those might be incorporated in your daily review. There's some debate about how to do that. Is there just about everything here, but I dwelled on it for a little bit of time. Quick access lists, which we just went over. Okay, and the weekly review, I got that in reverse order, but this is what we went over. Okay, so I hope that was of some help to you. Often I get questions from people who disagree or they have their own way of doing it. It's interesting. They have suggestions. They can see problems with this. And that's why I make changes too. As I say, this is not something that I dictate to anybody. Okay, productivity hacks. Guys, here I make no attempt. How are we doing for time, by the way, Jeff? I think we're okay. We got a little while
We're
left.
doing just fine. I've got
Okay.
12:38, so
Okay, great. All right. This part I think is going to go a bit more quickly. Here, guys, I make no attempt to cover every possible piece of advice. And I'm just cherry picking really from a few things that have worked according to what my clients have told me and what I've experienced personally. There are millions of productivity hacks, literally. I couldn't be exhaustive. And I'm going to kind of be all over the place, casting a wide net, but of course, it could be much, much wider because there's so much. So I do not pretend to be exhaustively comprehensive here. Just some thoughts that occurred to me that have come up with clients that I'm sharing with you. Some of this stuff, maybe a lot of you heard. That's great. Perhaps some things you could consider. Okay. And this is an opportunity for that. So I just want to say something. This is really straightforward. You've probably heard this before. Okay. Uh, Having a clean workspace. Um, Now, there are some folks who they kind of know where their stuff is. It looks messy to other people, but to them it's clean. I respect that, and I make no changes there. It's rather to those of you who kind of feel like, I could clean this up. There have been studies performed, and it definitely seems to enhance focus. Did you need studies to tell you that? Probably not. Okay, but they're out there because it seems like everything is studied. Um, I found that the secret to it is to actually have a place for the things to go. They have a home. Often things just stick around because they have no place to go. And when they finally find their home, then it's much easier to deal with them. So devote some time to doing that, and you'll find that keeping your office clean is a much easier Sure. Managing email. I'm going to just say this is like a no one has solved this problem, and I haven't solved it either. Okay, these are just some suggestions to maybe make things a bit easier because we are living a welter of emails. Sometimes, your job requires continuous, frequent email monitoring, and this won't make any sense. But I do think setting aside specific times for email is a good habit. Okay, and then 20 to 30 minutes, 20 minutes, excuse me, maybe more, maybe less, and adjusting from there. Uh, I I realize that for some this is just impossible. We are kind of attached at the hip to our cell phones. We're going to be looking at them all day, and advice just bounces off the wall. I get it. Okay? But if you're desperate about this, you're like literally being hijacked by your cell phone all the time, or you really need to manage your emails in a way that doesn't interfere with your work, you could consider this. Okay, unsubscribe from as much as you can, and I think you should have an audit for that. Okay, I'll say a few more things. You can flag select emails to go into files for review later. That way they don't clutter your inbox, and it is in alignment with your plan of checking a couple, 2 or 3 times during the day, maybe 3 or 4. Okay, guys, forget about the zero email. If you like that, you can do it. Do it. I'm against it. Okay, it definitely has a kind of hygiene, but you can use the search function. I wouldn't get too wrapped up about it. I think there's a lot of anxiety about this. And some folks have thousands of emails. Should you clean them all up? Not necessarily. Okay. But be careful before you CC, because often the more stuff you send, the more you'll get back. Okay. So that's all I have to say about that. Could there be more said? There'd be like a book written about this, books. So that's a way, it's almost farcically short. Just wanted to share a few things. You've probably heard some stuff, maybe 1 or 2 things you could consider. Okay, cell phone. You've heard this. I just reiterate it. Okay, place it out of reach sometimes is important. Okay, if you can do that, because if it's within reach, you're going to use it. If it's outside of reach, it's just one obstacle between you and the cell phone. Okay, if you have a hard time, put it in another room. Have clients do this. Okay, sometimes they'll stop doing that, but then they'll do it again when they know that this thing is just basically wreaking havoc in their lives, constantly interrupting them, notifications, they can't turn them off, etc. Okay, and find a little place for it. But if you actually have a little away home, rather than just putting it on the top of a drawer, somehow this is something that's more likely to get off the ground. Okay, it really ups the chance. And you can combine it with checking voicemail text messages too. There's a nuclear option. Some people have employed this. Might sound a little crazy, so give it to somebody else. But I recognize that might be impossible. Okay, but this is if you almost like you're pathologically just addicted, and you know someone else who's in the same boat. You can get together, like sort of partners in crime, and try this out. But there have to be special work relationships for this to happen. Um, and the friendship has to be there. Obviously, the trust has to be there. Distraction, guys. A lot of shiny objects during the day, etc. And what I suggest is just putting like a slogan on your computer screen, somewhere where you can see it. Okay, just as a reminder to self. Is this really important? It'll bug you a little bit. It may not bug you enough, but there's a chance that you can use your environment um, to your advantage. It becomes your friend. Okay, I say just use a couple. Too many, nothing stands out. Okay, and update because after a while, everyone becomes part of the furniture. And you don't notice it anymore. So during a daily review, when you get to say, I don't see that thing anymore, just replenish. Okay, you might even change. But this is something I've seen effective. It might seem a little not like it wouldn't be all that effective. Give it a go. See if it works for you. Interruptions. Okay. If you have a door, close it. I'm amazed at the folks I work with. They have a door, but they never close it. Now, it might be the case that your workplace has a kind of open door policy. You get that sense. This isn't going to fly, then don't do it. But if you can do it, try it. If people will be less inclined to interrupt you if the door is closed and you've got a sign on saying you're busy. That might seem really rude and like, I'm busy. Nobody interrupt me. Then don't do that. Okay. Just forget about it. But this could be kind of like the nuclear option for interruptions. Okay. And otherwise, also just on your calendar, if others have access to it, you should indicate when you're busy. So they don't just think you're free and can make changes to your calendar just walking on. Okay. One other thing, headphones. It's not going to be a suit of armor against interruptions, but again, it's another obstacle. You don't listen to anything. It might seem like I'm a total fake. I'm listening to nothing. Everybody knows that. Forget it. Okay. But something to think about. Okay, if you're in an open space, people can just walk by and say, "Hey, could you do this?" A little less inclined to do it if you seems like you're preoccupied. One last thing here, the scripted response. Okay, someone is maybe like a repeat person who just likes to chat, good person, not necessarily no ill intent here, but they interrupt, they want to talk, kind of water cooler stuff. I say just come up with something, you know. And the main thing here is to have something at the ready. You could tweak it a little bit, and I'm not suggesting you like read it off a card. It has to be the same every time. Okay, but something that you could think of with comfortable delivery. You write it down, memorize. Anything's done, folks. Time blocking, we tend to underestimate. So I'd say add about 20% more and go from there. Okay. And select three important tasks during the day and highlight those on your daily to-do list as must completes. Okay. Put them in a visible place, like on a whiteboard even. That way you'll at least you get something done. Even if your to-do list is a fantasy, so to speak, okay, you'll get three things done, 2 to 3 things done, say, and you can feel some sense of accomplishment due to that. Guys, this is a secret weapon, using a timer. And I use one and not the cell phone. And why is that? Well, okay, you can use the cell phone because there are some sophisticated timers there. But let me say a little about this. When you use a timer, it kind of feels official like you started somehow more obligated, you might say, to do your task, put it out of sight. And when your time is up, stop. Okay. Prevents task creep and forces you to focus fully on the work and on the outcome. Why with the cell phone? Because often the cell phone contains the email, it contains a lot of temptations. An old fashioned, or this is like literally like a kitchen timer. Something is different, no complications, can be much more effective here. It doesn't introduce the potential distractions that I talked about earlier. Okay, so use a dedicated timer. I experiment with that. Okay, batching small tasks, folks. Okay, small tasks, put them together, and allow maybe 20 to 30 minutes for this. It can be non-work related stuff. But if like all these small tasks, people say they're just piling up. I never get to them. Okay, put them together. Try to do those at the same time if it can be done physically. That's delivering something to the FedEx office and then filing away something. Obviously, it can't all be done within 20 minutes. So you just think about that in terms of what's practical. Peak energy, little question I had. We're coming up against the 45. Jeff, I think there was yeah. When are people most energetic?
Well, I put it in as again, gave people three options.
Yeah.
So for when is your peak?
Okay.
Who here has peak energy in the morning? Me, I'm at my peak energy. My prime time changes depending on the day, or late night is where I function best. So those answers
Mm,
are coming in now, and we'll give it just another minute for people to weigh in here. I am a lifelong night owl. Morning is not my time.
yeah. Me too. It's a bit of a problem for work, isn't it? I mean, it can be okay because you're working on stuff, but during the day, yeah. I wish I were a morning person.
I
I have
find
morning
too that
person
like
envy.
3 o'clock in the afternoon, I have to take a break and get a cup of coffee or something because that's a real, a little bit after
Ah,
lunch is
yeah.
really challenging. So I'll share these results. You can see how they come up. We got a pretty even
Oh,
split here,
okay.
Stefan.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting. Wow. 42, 29, 29. Okay. Great. Thanks, folks. Well, what I say is your most important tasks, try to schedule them when your energy is greatest. Now, realize this might not be possible if your peak energy is at 1 a.m. Okay. But think about when you're most effective, given the time that you have for work, whatever your spread is. Look, if you're someone who works at night and that's where your energy is, then your bed is made quite literally. But is it after you exercise? Sometimes it's when people do things. When they eat, they feel either sluggish and they want to go to sleep, or they feel energized. People metabolize in different ways. Okay, if you're not sure, you can keep an activity log, see what works. Okay, and schedule perhaps your most important and difficult stuff then. I want to add something here. You might have heard something called Eat the Frog. Okay. It's a book by a guy named Brian Tracy. He got the quote from Mark Twain. And the idea is you should do what is most difficult earliest. There's definitely something to that. Okay. So long as it coincides with your peak energy, that's the main thing. I wouldn't feel obliged to do this if it turns out you're really an afternoon person. Won't work. Probably won't work. Okay. So I would say choose energy over early. Okay. My little slogan. Okay. we're just about, I think we're going down the final stretch here. Guys, when a task is difficult to start, just complete a couple of short, easy first waves to give you a boost. Find this definitely works. Kind of nice, easy landing. And break down things into smaller pieces, chunking. Break them down. Here's the thing. Try just 5 to 10 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes, leave a little time open at the backside, like say 20 minutes maybe, and you will find that if you can get into the cockpit for 5 minutes, you'll stay in. Not always, but it's hard. It's just chances of you falling out at that point, unless it's really hard, are greatly diminished. Okay, you'll probably make it to the 30s. Guys, get enough sleep. Now, this I'm going to sound like your mom and dad here. I felt like I had to put this in, so forgive me. I find that sometimes this is at the root of so many people's difficulties at completing tasks. They're tired. They're not getting the sleep they need, and I'm not a sleep coach, but the evidence seems to be that if you're going to try to hit this, work on getting up rather than going to sleep because you have more control over that. Exercise, you heard it all before. Okay, everything from carpal tunnel to diabetes, folks. Yes, exercise regularly, easier said than done. I know. If you could take a couple of walks though during the day, actually the health benefits of this are enormous, according to studies that have been performed. Okay, so schedule them if you can, and they also increase your energy. We're just about at the end of these gimmicks here, so to speak. You guys, be kind to your body. Try one of these standing desks. Okay, I've got one. It's called a desk converter. I get to stand up, sit down during the day. Some of these are like mechanical. You push a button, they go up, they go down. You don't have to do anything. They're kind of pricey if they're mechanical, and they can break. They got a desk that's at halfway, and you can't use it. Some of them have hydraulic systems that are manual. I say go for those. Here's a what is a desk converter? It looks like this. You put it on your desk. I've actually got the one on the left. I'm using it right now. Okay, but you can use one on the right. There are many to choose from. And I go up and down. It goes up easily, but it helps me stay kind of moving a little bit. That muscles aren't as tight. Okay. And last thing, guys, for motivation, there's so many things that you could do. Many of them don't work. This one doesn't always work either, but I have noticed writing kind of like an accomplishments list. Okay. Um, what's important and substantive during the previous day doesn't have to be earth shattering. Okay. Some days nothing will make it. Add that to a weekly accomplishments list and review that. Okay. It's like 2 to 3 items for like a monthly list as well. And then check these out, give you a mental boost. I'm not doing anything in my job. I'm not being effective. Some people will say to me, and I say, really? See what you've done. They discover actually they've done quite a bit. And this can be a bit of a boost for them. And I think, okay, I actually am a bit more effective than I thought I was being. It's hard to get that perspective. This can help with that too. And give you a sense that you are making a difference in your work. Folks, looking back, cell phone, distractions we talked about, interruptions, compensating for overestimation, most important tasks, 3 of them, using a timer, task batching, working at peak energy, overcoming procrastination, the sleep thing, exercise, office ergonomics, and motivation. And last tip is to hang out with, I mentioned this in my last one, by the way, is to hang out with productive people. Goodness. Okay. Don't let your sort of your people hold you back. Okay. Try to hang out with people who are dedicated to the success that they're shooting for in their life too. Okay, guys, and to learn more about me, and Jeff will share this later, you can visit this website, and here's some contact information will be provided to you after the webinar, should you wish to follow up. And thank you very much. What time we have left, I'm eager to at least address any questions that people have.
Yeah, we've got a few that have come in already. Thank you, Stefan, for doing this. You covered so much. I want to mention, in addition to, I'll be sharing this contact information that you've got here with everybody. You've also given us permission to share a PDF copy of your slides so that
Yes,
people can go
all this
back to
stuff,
these.
get
So
it
I'll be
all.
sending those out to everybody tomorrow or Friday. But one question that came in, it's actually a really great one. If my workplace already uses task tracking software across teams, one example
Mm,
is Asana, how do I integrate that into my own to-do list for the workday and also not miss any of the team-generated tasks? So I'm guessing you've had clients, it's probably places I'm thinking like law firms where people are billing clients by the hour
yeah,
that are already using some kind of to this point, teams wide task to-do list. What are your thoughts on that?
sure. My sense is that to the extent that some of those task wide team-wide tasks are easily accessible, available to you. You don't have to reduplicate them necessarily. Okay, but there might be some that you'll want to do, especially to the extent that they have some proximity or connection to like personal stuff. Okay, so what I mean is that I didn't say this, but I'll be explicit. I think the one's to-do list should contain both work-related stuff and personal. So the to-do list that I have in mind contain them all, rather than having two separate lists. Okay, and there's going to be some interaction between obviously the personal and the work-related throughout the day, not to mention after work is over and so on. So I say keep reduplication to a minimum, okay? But to the extent that you have a sense that a particular task is one that you you might not have immediate access to, or you might have a tendency not to perform, or not to get it into a personal system so that you can see it in connection with all your other tasks as well, and that'll create a synergy there. Okay, I realize that this is a big topic. There's a lot of kind of team related stuff out there, task managers for teams and organizations, and creating kind of synergies between that and a personal system can be a challenge. But leverage it to the extent that you can, and try in other words to keep reduplications to a minimum. Okay, some people say you actually should boost reduplications, and I'm against that. I think that it's a welter of information. Keep those reduplications to a minimum, but you reduplicate when you think it's going to be necessary to ensure that you're on task.
One question I wanted to ask you, and this probably is, maybe we'll invite you back to do another hour-long session on this. I was interested to see, you mentioned keeping your workspace clean.
Uh,
And that has been a problem for me in the past. But right now, my desk in my office is spotless because I don't really use paper anymore, right? Everything's
uh,
digital. And my digital spaces are a hot mess. My Google Drive is a mess. We're using Microsoft Teams and SharePoint in the office, as well as other, to the question that we asked, other project management systems. Do you have any basic thoughts about how do you keep your digital spaces clean? I'm guessing you might even suggest something like you got to carve out time once a month just to start filing things
you
away,
got
getting
it.
rid of the clutter.
Yeah, yeah, you got it. There's really no other way. Let me just add two things. So the first is to carve out that time and sort of do a like a deep cleaning. But that doesn't solve the problem, because what happens as you go forward in time and the mess begins to accumulate again. And what I have sometimes seen is that as with stuff in our physical space, people don't put things away or file right away. They leave that to later on. So the real sort of the secret within the secret is to clean up as you go. It applies to dishes, it applies to office, and it applies to this too. And that's often what leads to people then creating files they don't need because they can't remember where something went. Now they have a duplicate of a file, and it metastasizes beyond control. By the way, I'm not immune to this. This is what you're talking about. To the extent that I've been able to manage it, it's that. Rather than putting it off, I try to do it in the moment. I try to do it when I can right then. And that keeps it within some manageable form, at least for me.
Yeah. It's funny, as you were answering me, I'm thinking, yeah, my desktop is immaculate, but I literally have a desktop on my computer that is a hot mess, and I gotta
Yeah,
spend that time to go in and clean it.
yeah.
Question that just came in. What was the name of the book that you mentioned at the top of the call about the daily review?
Sure. Getting things done. Dave Allen. Okay. He kind of like in a way he's sort of the great great grandfather of this in terms of looking at uh, workflow, etc. Not teams related stuff. The person who asked about like Asana and all that, he has nothing to say about that. Or at least he now has something to say about it, but he didn't have much to say about it when he first hit the scene because such things didn't exist. But it's a book that's been updated and worth checking out. It's a bit thick though. It's kind of like it's like a Bible, but a lot of good stuff in there. Dave Allen, Getting Things Done.
Are there other books or like online resources, websites, anybody's particular blog around the
Yeah,
organization that
I
you
like.
become similar
There's a
to?
guy named I'm looking at his book now, Damon Zahariadis. His name is a little hard to pronounce. Time Management Solution. He has a website, podcast. He's got some books, and I think he's he's definitely another person that you could consider as well. Uh, what I've seen is that also Brian Tracy, the guy who wrote Eat the Frog, great stuff. I made I probably disagree with him. It's just a little wrinkle, okay, of a modification of something that he said. Eat the Frog itself was a book worth checking out. A lot of great advice in there. It's not just about eating the frog, it's about other things too: time management, task management, some self-management stuff, even some emotional regulation. When you're feeling anxiety, if you're feeling overwhelmed, what do you do? Okay, he's got stuff to say there. Brian Tracy's another person.
Well, this was fantastic. You covered way more stuff than I thought you would, but it was all really interesting, and I'll make sure to capture some of those specific resources you just mentioned and get those in the follow-up email. But Stefan, I wanted to say great job. I think what you shared is really sort of actionable. I love also that you talked about everything as a spectrum, right? You don't immediately have to jump into 15 different lists.
No,
Just get yourself started,
no
and,
way.
and that's realistic, I think, for so many working professionals.
Exactly.
But
It is.
I think again, this is the third webinar that you've done for our community. I really, on behalf of all of BU, just want to say thank you for sharing your expertise and your passions with us. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thanks for everyone who showed up, for listening. Thanks for your questions. It's a great pleasure.
I also want to thank everybody for coming today, particularly those of you that have donated to BU. I hope you'll join me in making a gift to the university fund that means the most to you. Our next career webinar is coming up on Friday, November 1st. The title of it is How to Get Your Career in Gear, a Plan for Young Professionals and New Graduates. That's going to be a great session for folks that are just starting their careers, whether you just graduated or maybe you're 10 years out in that first job and looking forward to making the next move. So as always, you can sign up for that session now on our website at bu.edu/alumni. I hope you'll keep an eye there on our alumni events calendar for all kinds of events that are happening around the world and online, as well as our monthly career newsletter. Hopefully you're all seeing it. It's called The Edge. We send it early every single month with links to places for resources and events to sign up for. And talk about things like I mentioned BU Connects. We also have a great alumni career podcast called Proud to BU. So thank you again, everybody, but particularly thank you, Stefan. We really appreciate you doing this for us.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great day or a great evening, wherever you might be.
Bye now.